Hi everyone, and welcome to Global Azure Norway Day 3. For any newcomers to the stream, my name is Oddmund Bakke, and I am part of the .NET user group here in Norway who are organizing this event. And I will be your host for this fourth and last session for today. If you have any questions during the talk, please use the chat to post them, and I will include them after the talk. And here is our speaker for this session, Daniele Fontani. So without further ado, the stream is yours.
Hi everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Daniele Fontani. I'm here today for talking about DevOps and trend of DevOps. Three picture of myself, who I am. I'm a tracking lover. I am open source fanatic, and in the spare time, I work as a CTO in Sintra Consulting. That's a digital business company. How to keep in touch with me? Here, there are all the links of my social network or my blog, and if you want, you can join and ask me everything. Even after this presentation, I will try to respond and answer to all other questions. But now we can go ahead to the core of this presentation, looking to the agenda. The first part of this session will be about what is DevOps today. In short word, we will explore what was the journey about DevOps since 2009, when Patrick Debois coined this term, until nowadays, and we try to understand how companies and how organizations are managing DevOps problem in their companies. The second point we will focus today is about the future of DevOps. Because as a consultant, as a professional, we have to stay near to the future. We have to be ready for the changes that we'll have in the near future. And finally, we will try to understand how to survive to this change. So how it's possible to keep updated and what are the trends to follow to being ready when the market will change. Well, go through the first step. What is DevOps today, and how companies are using DevOps for bring benefit from these methodologies in their organization. First point, of course, is something that everybody of us already knows, and that's what is DevOps. DevOps, of course, is the practice all put together, development and operation for keeping a team or a person or something inside the company that is aware of what happened between the end user and the operational system. And putting together development and operation, of course, we get DevOps, that not only a word, but it's a mindset where developer and operation cooperate. And this culture spread a lot in the last year. And in fact, this brings a lot of benefits, and that's why we are here to talk about that. And DevOps bring us to process definition and automation of some processes inside the IT. And it brings to better quality, less misunderstood between the teams, an easy way to communicate, because probably we will use the same languages. And there is no more feud inside the company because all is together. Well, but what is the state of art in most companies? For what we understood, DevOps grew quickly and is widespread inside the companies. But not all the companies has a same way for approaching DevOps. So how they organize the team inside their organization. And the third question, the more important question, is how many companies are using DevOps and how they are using it, because you can use DevOps just for automate a single piece of the pipeline, or you can fully embrace DevOps. There are a lot of steps between 0 to 1000%. And now it's time to give some number to you. What happened on the market? The market is estimated of about $8 billion in 2022. That's a very amount if we think to the number itself. But if we follow the research from Grandview Research, the expected number in 2025 will be 12 billion. So it's a huge step forward. So we have space for growth. And if you see the IDC report in the 2023, the number of organizations releasing code for specific application will be increased from 3% to 30%. That's a big step forward. So will be a 10 factor of company that will be using DevOps for deploying application. And the same number is confirmed by CNCF that tells that since the 2018 to the 2019, we have cut by half the number of deployment that are done manually. So automatic is better than manually because, of course, reduce human error and save time and money for the companies. The last point that's not strictly related with DevOps, but I just spoiled some question that will come out later on this presentation. We are seeing a big increase of the usage of Kubernetes. Since the 2080, it was the 58%, now is about 68% in 2019. That's a big number. And what it means? It means that a lot of companies are embracing this technology probably for helping the integration with the DevOps part, like the cloud. Also, the cloud have a very, very big increasing. And this help and fuel the automatization and the DevOps processes. But making a step back, what is really DevOps? DevOps is Kubernetes, DevOps is the cloud, DevOps is technology. No. DevOps is a philosophy. And what it means? It means it's not a team, it's not a person, it's not a technology, it's not a tool. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy for removing friction, remove constraint, and make everybody aware of what happened between the source code and the servers. So the next step that every company had at some time to phase off is how to implement DevOps. How it's possible to implement a philosophy? Because you need to deploy an application. You don't need to embrace a philosophy. So how we can deploy an application, how we can start a DevOps practice in a company? Well, the first approach that I see in companies is to create teams made of shared resources. So you had development team, you had operation team, you create a new team that is composed by people that in the, not spare time, but in part-time make something on the DevOps side. So this solution is very, very spread and is not so bad because the resources that work on the DevOps side or operation side are always updated because they put hands on development things or operation things. So they are updated. You don't have some silos outside the team that work on the project. But the problem here is that we are speaking about people that are not always available because they are part-time DevOps. So this may be a problem when you have something to do in hurry, or when there are some project manager or something like that don't want to be too much agile and want to have to be sure that somebody will answer if we will pick up the phone and call. So another solution that I see in companies is that we can have a team that is an embedded team for DevOps practice. So we are people that work full-time on DevOps, and this resolves the problem that if you pick up the phone, somebody will answer. But this opens some problems, because if you stay outside the stay outside the operation team, you probably will lose some hard skill. And in few time, you may be not so competent. And what we can do here is to add training session or rotate people between teams to keep everybody updated. And this can be done, but it's not automatic and may be costly. But of course, you don't have more any double hats or conflict between teams. And the final approach that I have seen implemented in big companies that often work with that are multi-product company, where you have a department that work on the A product and a department that work on the B product. So different department mean different teams, and you can have a DevOps team inside each one of these departments. So you have separated DevOps teams. DevOps teams work near the development team and the operation team, so they are very agile. They are dedicated to the project, so it is efficient, but can be put in place only if you have a very big project to work on. And of course, the other problem is that you work in that way, each team is a silos. Each team is isolated and maybe a different realm. So it's hard to share best practice, to share common rule, and maybe you can have some people that will be not replaceable because of that situation. So, of course, there is no a fitting rule that works on all contexts, of course, but these three scenarios cover most of the situation that you can face on your companies. The last slide about the first part of this presentation is about some number. These numbers are taken from statista.com and report some good KPI for what is DevOps. I will read the most important. If you see the last one, the 6% of the companies never heard about DevOps before. And this are very, very bad things, I feel. And if you see, only the 10% of the companies fully embraced DevOps. What we are talking about, 10%. The 15% of the companies are considering DevOps, but have not yet started. Okay, this number are not are from 2019. So I hope in 2 years things have changed. Of course, it may vary by country. It can vary by industry to industry. Maybe if you are talking to finance is different than fintech or manufacturing, probably. But the fact is that we have a lot of space. And as a professional and consultant, when we come to a company, when we speak with our boss and so on, we have, of course, to work on the cultural side of the DevOps, because we have to spread the philosophy between starting talking about teams, organization, and technology. We have to spread the philosophy and then get back time and budget for solving this situation that is very, very, very hard. But if we want to do that, we have to be updated. We have to be a step forward from what is the need of the companies today. And this is the topic of this presentation, to anticipate as much as possible the new trends that will be in place in the next year, that now maybe not all the company are ready for that, but probably will need that in the next year. And just jump to the next section of this presentation, that is the more interesting part. What is the future of DevOps? Okay, we talked about what was DevOps until now, but what are the trends? what are the things that we need to follow for being prepared to the future. First one. This is a buzzword, okay? DevSecOps. This is a buzzword, but it's an important buzzword. It is an important buzzword because, of course, security has been always important, always, since the Stone Age. But with the growing usage of digital services and the storage of sensitive data, I think, biometrical data, photo or just name or credit card number, now it's crucial. Every application, all sensitive information. And the user started asking where their data are and how you are managing. So you have a responsibility on that. And our customer expect that we keep their information secure. We cannot fail on that. There is no B plan. You have to do it right since the beginning. And by the way, the same user that asks for secure data and so on, is always more demanding and need to be supported by agile processes for keep the application updated to their need, because we have multiple releases. Sometimes we have to make many releases each day. That's probably the story from Patrick Debois, and that generated the DevOps terms. So how we can handle these two different needs, to be quick and to be safe? Okay, it's hard, but we cannot have the situation where we finish a project and we will have a bug in production, a security bug in production. We cannot go live without a security check. We cannot do that. But what is the workflow for getting this result? Okay, sorry, too quick. Okay, what is the workflow? Okay, I design the application, I develop the application, or a task, of course. I test it, functional test, I mean. Then, if it is not working, I fix that and go on until the product works as I expect. Well, now it's time for security check. But what happens if security check tell that the application is not safe? You start from the beginning. You throw away days of work. You postpone the go live of the application. All that scenario in modern application are not more suitable. We cannot allow that because it's a wasting of time, a wasting of money. Our competitors will be on the market with the same feature before us, and we will be fired. Not be planned for that. So it is the approach that we cannot more implement in our project management, because we cannot design and have multiple do steps and then check for security only at the end of this process. This is very hard. This is very hard to implement. So the solution, as we have done for dev and operation, you remember, you had dev and operation that worked in different silos, and we understood what was the problem on production only after we put the application on production. With security is something that's it's very similar, not the same, but very similar. So what is the solution? You do not need to have too much fantasy for getting something like that. Just put together dev, operation, and security since the beginning of the project. You cannot introduce later the security problem. Okay, and that's all. That's simple. That's simple to talk. That's simple to explain in word, but in practice, it's not so easy. But it's still not a problem of technology. We have to apply the same technology, the same procedure we do at the end of the project, at the end of the feature, but we have to anticipate since the first test, we have to involve people since the beginning of the project. Well, go through the second point. This is still a buzzword. And the question is self-explicative. NoOps is madness. Depends of the meaning that you are going to attribute to the no operation word. Of course, the negation at the beginning of the word is always like a trouble, but just try to understand better what is the real meaning for me about the NoOps. Of course, NoOps, what is? NoOps mean no operation. So the philosophy is to remove, basically, all the platform management and the operational part, everything that is between development and production environment. Okay, so we want to reduce the infrastructure impact, the DevOps impact at all. So the purpose of NoOps is to define a process where there is no need to combine the part of development and operation, making it works. Okay, the goal is easy, make things deployable by design with no effort from anybody. Okay, this is simple, not possible. But what we can try to give a further definition to NoOps. The further definition that we can do, because we cannot do that. We cannot remove DevOps. We cannot develop everything. We cannot just put Git source code to the production without any step before. What we can do is something more useful. Is to reduce. Is try to automate everything. Is to reduce the human effort. Is try to reduce the friction, the conflict between teams. So, if you think to NoOps like this concept, so reduce the frictions and automate all you can, well, NoOps is possible, and NoOps is the solution for many of problems you have usually on DevOps scenarios. And of course, this may seem cool, but you cannot forget about monitoring, security, and FinOps, because at the end of the month, you will have a cloud invoice and you will have to pay it. So you have to keep, you have to be aware about the cost and what you are activate or not on the cloud. And you have to monitor and be safe on application. We talked a few minutes ago about DevSecOps, so it's time to put it in practice. Well, another point is infrastructure as a code. Okay, I love code. And why I love code? And why source code is so cool? I love the source code because it is versionable, can be copied and pasted, just for tell one thing, and can be sent via mail. You can execute twice, and if you execute the source code twice, it gives you the same result twice, hopefully. And historically, if I think to sysadmin, servers, virtual machine, data center, is not really the same. You cannot take a data center and zip and send via mail to your colleague, okay? But we would that also our data center, our application, our infrastructure was like a code, okay? Why? Because I could version my infrastructure. I could share with my colleague if they start a new project like mine, and I can replicate it. If I work on B2B fields and I have many customers with the same B2B solution, and I have a replicable solution that I can just branch on Git or something like that and deploy, will save a lot of time. And then telling to my sysadmin guys that we need a new server, he have to install Apache or IIS or MySQL or SQL Server or so on. Or if you are in the cloud, just activate a list of services. This is very messy. we want to have an infrastructure as a code that can be run. And if we run the infrastructure twice, we'll create two infrastructure that will be the same. I don't want to talk about disaster recovery and so on, because today I want to be positive, but of course we know that disaster will happen. It's not a matter if will happen or not, but it's just a question of time. So you have to keep also this this aspect of you have to keep in mind this before adopting an infrastructure as a code. This will be very helpful also in this case. So, but how can I implement that? How can I do that possible? Of course, there are thousands of ways to do that. I report here just the three main, the two systems. The Ansible is good for when you work on premise or virtual machine. It's very good. You can automate a lot of things, and it is a good automation tool. Of course, if you are going to the cloud, if you are used to use cloud services or container or Kubernetes, probably Terraform is can give you some extra boost on this. Then the third part that is not a tool for automating such kind of things is Kubernetes. Because, of course, Kubernetes is not something that is used for implementing infrastructure as a code. But the infrastructure that you can create with Kubernetes is described by YAML file. Okay, YAML file are not source code, but configuration file. But if you think to YAML file is not so different from source code. So you can automate the creation of infrastructure starting from the YAML file. And this make not really an infrastructure as a code, but a good starting point if you are approaching to this result, of course. Then you can easily pass to Terraform or other tool that can automate the creation part. Just mention Helm or other things like that. Well, another point, I think the last important point on this presentation is about assembly line. What is the matter with pipeline? Pipeline is how we are used to approach DevOps. So we have stages: build, test, and package, and then deploy to the server. And this scenario was very good when we was working on a monolithic web application. It's probably the scenario that Patrick Debois in 2009 faced when he started to talking about DevOps, because it's easy. You have a monolithic application. You have a repository. You just have to compile and put to the server. Everything is work. But now the situation is a little bit different. Okay, we passed from this simple scenario, so one code base and one linear pipeline, to something more like this, if you are lucky. So you have, if you are lucky, one UI application, Angular application, React application, a single page application somewhere. Then you have a backend, and backend for front-end application that expose API to the front end, so another application. And then the triple dot, all the other systems. So you can have other backend, other system that you cannot control. So this means that you have a lot of actor, a lot of cycle of life in the software life cycle. So you may have this. You may have to go live with a fix from the UI. Then you can go live with the API, and each changes of the application need changes on the other kind of application. So it's very hard. And we have also the problem of security. We have also the problem of transparency with the management team. So what is the evolution, a possible evolution of pipeline? We have to come back. We have to come back to the beginning of the last century, when we started the industrial revolution. Okay, this photo is from the Ford Motor Company. As we see, we have an assembly line where all the actors okay, contribute for building a car. That's what we want to create on our DevOps process. So we want that developer, operation, security, and more, testing team, and more, project management, everything give his contribution to the process in this big tool, okay, that will be called island of automation, and all that contribution will be visible to other, will be easy to be aware of what happened behind the hood on your application, on your project. So doing like that, we do not have more a linear pipeline. We have something like more hard. In this simple diagram, we see how the SecOps teams can build new container images and test it. These container images can be delivered by the operation team and included in the process, so that development team just push the source code. Then the testing team see what happened when the new version is ready. Okay, and what I'm telling is not a matter of tool, because we already have tools, but it's a matter of cultural. Even in this case, if we put all the people together in the same process and be everything aware of what happened, will be easy to dominate the process. And how this island of automation is composed is a tool, a super tool, okay, that has source control, the continuous integration, continuous deployment part, can host artifacts, okay, NuGet packages, jar packages, packages, and every kind of output you can have in your company. We have some testing tool, we have an infrastructure provisioning tool, and we have good system of communication, maybe better a project communication tool, and then finally some deployment target where you can to deploy things. Okay, if you think to your tool, you probably already knows about Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is a tool that do that. Its cloud has more or less every single feature we need for doing that. If you don't want to do that, you can take multiple tools and put together. Okay, it's not a matter of tool, but this is your goal. Your goal is to bring all the actors, put inside only one process, make that this process is only one and available to everybody. Well, going on to the last point, cloud. Cloud is our friend. We are here talking about on the global Azure initiative, that is, of course, mostly a cloud initiative. We are talking on the cloud and so on. So if we had to start a new project or do something, probably the cloud is the best solution, of course. Sometimes not, because we may have some strict requirement and so on, but this is still not a problem. We can implement a multi-cloud and hybrid cloud solution that can give the benefits from the cloud and satisfy all requirement on the project. So wrapping up my second part of this presentation, what we have to remember about the DevOps trend is that we have to keep security and bring inside the process, inside the DevOps process, for creating safe application. We have to reduce as much as possible the human effort and the friction on the DevOps process with NoOps, sorry. And we have to keep the infrastructure as a code for being replicable and avoid bad situation like disaster recovery without any recovery plan. We are going to create some more complex pipeline than linear pipeline, and we have to start thinking to be cloud native for our next project. Finally, why the future is not so near? Of course, just look back to the number I presented at the beginning of this presentation. Their number is very embarrassing. So we have a lot of space for improving since the cultural layer of the company. So we have to do our best for change the culture in company. And now we have some information about the trend that we will be needed in the next year, so we can bring practical solution to the company. Of course, it's not the same on all the company, all the fields. Maybe what is a standard for me is not for you. Maybe if you work on a tech company, you go fast. And of course, the fact is that some company don't know anything about DevOps. 6% is a very big number. Well, why I talked about Kubernetes on the previous slide? That's about it's a practical solution that can help customers that are reluctant for the cloud and for DevOps to be bring on this side of the progress, because Kubernetes can be run on cloud on premise, is described by source code, so it's quite infrastructure as a code is easy to be automated and can be set up quite easily for who has a background on as a sysadmin, and it is multi-cloud, so the vendor lock-in don't not scare too much, and it's a good solution. But we have also a lot of cloud solution like Azure Container Instance that can do the same. So having some infrastructure that is described by source file, that easy to deploy, then reduce the friction and so on. So it's not a technological problem, it's a cultural problem. I hope that in using this presentation, you will get some more info about these practices, and this may be useful for help all the tech community to change this number and spread the DevOps culture on the company, and make that this practice will save money, save time, and help developer and operation to work less and bring better result for quality product and software. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for having me on this stage. Here again, my social link. If you want to make me any question, even after this presentation, you can do it on all of this channel. I will try to answer to everybody. And then I finished.
Yes, thank you for that. That was a really interesting talk. We haven't got any questions from the audience, but you have some from NNUG here. So you talked about NoOps. It seems a very radical strategy. Is it really possible? And what kind of technology do we need to do that?
This is a very huge question. Of course, yes, I agree. NoOps is very radical. Of course, something telling to remove everything is creating a problem on development side. But the solution is to think about NoOps like a vision to reduce as much as possible the frictions and trying to automate. Automate means to employ technology that require less human effort. So if you use human intensive technologies like virtual machine, of course it's hard. But if we start to think to the cloud or to think to cloud solution, well, so we will reduce the need of operation, we will keep things easy, and we can do something that is very similar to the NoOps in the meaning that is possible to implement, and will save time and money, because it's quite the same. Time and money for me is the same. So yes, it's possible. I can tell it's possible using the cloud, using the right technology is possible.
Yes, thank you. We got also two other questions from MNG, but they was cut a little bit off, so I can't put the whole question on screen, but I will read it out. So you also talked about a cultural shift for implementing a company-wide DevOps strategy. But why should I abandon traditional pipelines, and how can I expect that the CEOs or manager will be interested in how we deliver software?
Sure, that's another very huge question. Why a CEO should be interested on how we deliver software? Sure, it's quite the same. Why I should be interested in how the engine or my car is working? Of course, I don't want to understand how many pistons of cable are inside the hood. I just want to take the wheel and drive. But the reality is a little bit different, because all these cable, all these pistons, all these things on my car can make the difference when I drive the car. And the way where I deliver software in a company may be the difference to the product I deliver. So maybe may make the difference between a business that works or not. So even CEO and management have to start thinking about software development as a part of the business. It's not more a commodity. It's not more optional. So if we work on the cultural part, and we try to explain that to the manager, we will allocate budget probably for making experimentation and for investing on DevOps strategy. The big problem is that we face the problem, like a technical problem will be always hard to find budget, to be listened by the management, and to find a way for implementing stuff that the company will need. So it's hard. It's hard to make this cultural shift, but it won't be any digital transformation. It won't be any cloud transformation without having a right cultural shift before.
Yeah, thank you. And there was another question here from Anuga. So you talked about infrastructure as a code. Do you think all the companies are ready for that? The cost of the implementation is worth it? What kind of technical solution can help to implement such scenarios?
That's another very, very question that's hard to reply. If I see the number I presented, where the 6% of the companies don't know anything about DevOps and are not interested in learning anything, talking about infrastructure as a code is very out of scope for that scenario. But I have to be positive. I have to think that we as professionals, we should try to make this cultural shift possible, explain to that company what we are talking about, and yes, it's possible, because technology enable us to do that. So if technology enable us to do that, it's no more a question if it is feasible or not. It's not like trying to going on Mars. Okay, we know that there are no technology to send a rocket to Mars. Okay, Elon Musk are not convinced about that, but probably it's not possible to send a rocket to Mars right now. We are not talking about sending rocket to Mars. We are talking about deployment infrastructure as a code. We are technology, so we don't have to be scared about that. Elon Musk is not scared about sending rocket to Mars, so we cannot be scared about trying to deploy an infrastructure as a code. It is possible, of course. It costs. It is an investment, because deploy nodes cost a little bit less, because you just have to taking care about deployment, manage an infrastructure as a code, and additional code, probably the 50% more. So you have to think how many times you will have a disaster recovery plan to be put in practice. You have to think what we are doing. Probably if you are working on a B2B solution is useful, in each case, because you try to sell the same solution with some customization to many customers, so you can just replicate it with just a click, and this will save a lot of time. In other scenario, you do that just for be sure to have a backup and can replicate if you will need. So very depends on the budget and the approach you have to the source code.
Yeah, thank you. I will revisit that graph. The numbers. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
I don't see we have any other questions. So I think that's it. So again, thank you. It was really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Good. Yes. So, bye.
Bye-bye.